Good afternoon, guys. I'm Chris, and welcome back to this Wednesday's episode of Rift Amps. Last one on the Rotosphere then. It's fine. I've been testing it and testing it and testing it, and I cannot get this thing to play up anymore, which is, of course, a good thing. So I'm going to call that repair complete. Now, I don't know what to charge the guy for this repair, because it's a difficult one. So the actual fault, obviously just a broken wire or an intermittent connection inside the wire here. But by going through and repairing it, I've saved the owner the bother of having to find a new power supply with the correct end on it. Which might be quite expensive these days, if possible at all. So from that point of view, the convenience of having it repaired is arguably worth more than what it would cost to buy one of these if you could find one, right? But on the other hand, it is quite a simple repair. Now, in total, I've logged 1 hour and 15 minutes on this. So that's from initial diagnosis, testing, investigation, eliminating all the other things it could have been, going through the repair itself, post-repair testing, validation, all that kind of stuff. So a total of 1 hour and 15 minutes. Now, my bench fee is a 2-hour minimum. So as far as I'm concerned, I could charge this guy the full bench fee, which is £90, which is 75 plus VAT. But also, from another point of view, that does feel like it's a little bit too much. So I need to have a think about what I should charge this guy for this repair. What do you think is fair and reasonable? Because that's the way I like to work. I always like to be fair and reasonable, and that has to be to both myself and to the customer. So let me know in the comments below what you would charge for this repair. Bear in mind my standard hourly rate is £60 an hour, 60. So I've got 1 hour and 15 in it, but I do have a 2-hour minimum, which is charged at £90 total, so 45 an hour for the first 2 hours. So let me know what you would charge, what you think is fair and reasonable for this repair, power supply repair on this Tube Rotosphere. Bear in mind that without this does not work. Turned out to be quite a simple repair, but it was quite labour intensive. It's saved in the bother of having to find a new power supply. So how do you weigh that up? What would you do? Let me know in the comments. Different angle this week, or maybe slightly different angle. I just figured we would have a different view of the workshop while we do the Q&A. Now, before we start, a bit of bad news. Our good friends at Tubeant Doctor in Germany, unfortunately, heavy rain event meant that they were flooded. So they're all running behind schedule. They are struggling, bless them. So just sending good vibes over to them. Hope they're well. Hope they're getting on with life, getting all cleaned up, and they can get people's orders out the door, because we need good supply places like Tubeant Doctor, like Tubetown, like Banzai, your Autone in Finland or Norway. I think it's Finland. We need good places like that over here in the UK and Europe. These one-stop shops where hobbyists and even OEMs can go and get stuff. So and a company as big as Tubeant Doctor, who have been in the game for a very long time, it's a shame when they can't do what they do because of they were flooded. Absolutely crazy. So yeah, as I said, sending good vibes over to them. Hope they're well. Anyway, Perilous Temple said on paid promo. Do you remember I've been offered a paid promo to do a product review / demonstration on what appears to be a Chinese-made digital multimeter? And I'm kind of sitting on the fence about it. Anyway, Perilous Temple said, in my mind, it's different for test and tool type things. It's not like paid amp or pedal reviews. Yeah, okay. I see you got a point. I'm not saying I am right. If the agreement allows honest review and lets you have freedom giving pros and cons, and the pay is worth the trouble, it could be good for the channel, so good for the community. Well, unfortunately, with a lot of this stuff, it's you're not free to say what you want about these things when you're either being given the product for free or being paid for it. A lot of them will give you free product. Well, what happens is they make you pay for the product, and then what you do is you have a discount code on your video that your own viewers can use, and when they've received a certain amount of orders using your discount code, then they will refund me the cost of the item that I paid out in the first place. So that's a common way that these pay promotions work. I do get quite a few of them: 3D printers, standing desks. I get the classic ones for the computer games, but all the standard ones that you generally see on YouTube, you get offered them all the time. But most of the ones they will either say, if it's a low value item, they might send it to you for free. But often they want a good review with a creative story and all that kind of stuff. But I think if I'm going to tell you about something, I need to be able to give my true and honest opinion on it. And the only way to guarantee that is if I've paid for that thing myself. The only time I guess I would break that rule if it was something I already used anyway, and then I was approached by the company saying, we see you use our widget. If Knipex want to come to me and say, we see you use our snips, would you do a paid promo on them? Then I probably would, because I'm only going to say good things about these because they are fantastic. But that's not paid promotion, by the way. But that's probably the only time I would break that rule, would be if I already used and believed in that product anyway. But I don't think that's the way I want to go with the channel anyway, and that's why I do channel membership. So those who want to support the channel can do so, but it's entirely optional. You're not forced to watch me telling you about stuff that I don't really believe in just because I'm cashing in. So that's kind of where I sit with it. But I get your point, Perilous. I really do. But you're often not free to give both pros and cons on paid or channel support deals. Chris Murray, who is a regular commenter, welcome back, Chris, says, thank you so much, Chris. For the first time, I sort of understood capacitors. Obviously, my limit of knowledge in electronics is reinforced by my lack of a grasp on the absolute basics. And this, I got. Maybe once a month you could do something similar for other baby steps in electrical understanding. Not that you should bore the more aware among your viewers, but the occasional simplified explanation of some principles would be welcome from ignoramuses like me. Yeah, so I battle with this all the time, in that I tell all of you guys that this is not a tech channel, it's a vlog, it's a workshop diary. I try and keep the tech talk to the minimum. I just want to show you what I get up to each week. I want to show you inside stuff. But there's always going to be some crossover. There has to be. It's, what I'm doing is arguably quite technical. And I know that there are some viewers who tune into this channel because they want the more in-depth stuff, and in fact when I watch other amp tech channels, I see some of my own commenters comment on their videos as well, so I know the kind of channels you guys are watching. Don't worry, it hasn't gone over my head. But that's, again, it's not what I want to do on this channel. I don't want it to be too technical, too in depth, too much of a snooze fest. I just want to show you what I get up to each week, and then hopefully you guys may choose to bring an amp in for service and repair one day. Maybe you want to buy a pedal or an amp, but I certainly don't want to go into the technical level and detail that some of the other guys get into, because they're already doing it. And why would I try and compete with that? I want this channel to be something different and a bit more relaxed. But in terms of the very basic stuff, do you know what? I did sort of enjoy it. I enjoyed the I did say, kind of tongue-in-cheek, that, you know, I'm aiming it at 6-year-olds, but and I don't mean to be patronising with that at all, and of course you know I'm not, but it's, for some people, just having that, a very simple, basic, easy to follow explanation of what's going on really helps just make that, because you've probably, in your head, you've probably already got those 2 pieces of information there. You just don't know how they're connected. And if someone can just shine that torch on it and say, it's as simple, it can be thought of as simply as this, then that must be a good thing, right? And then if you want to reinforce that connection by going 1 level deeper, 2 level deeper, 10 levels deeper, feel free, fill your boots. I love that for you. But I often find, if you can explain something incredibly simple, boil it down to something incredibly simply and easily, often with visual aids, then a lot of people go, oh yeah, of course, that makes complete sense. Why didn't I ever think of that before? And I think if you can do that, you've ticked a massive box. So great comment, Chris. I appreciate that. Midnight Hour, who is also a regular commenter and viewer of the channel, welcome back. He says, question, in your experience, which makes the biggest difference / benefit in sound in size upgrades of a speaker, i.e. going from an 8 to a 10 or a 10 to a 12, or even from an 8 to a 12? Okay, so this is where we get into this objective opinion versus subjective opinion. On the objective side, we say, can I hear a difference? And the answer simply is yes or no. On the subjective side, we ask the question, do I like the difference? Now, you could say, can I hear a difference? Yes. Do I like the difference? Yes or no, right? You could also say, can I hear a difference? No. Do I like the difference? Well, there might not be a difference that you can hear, but because I've fitted that part, done that upgrade, made that change, it makes me want to make more music, then that's got to be a good thing, right? So that's, you know, those 2 things, keep that in mind. My subjective opinion, and this is not objective, so it's not fact, it's not a black and white answer, it's what I prefer, my own personal taste, is I don't like single 10-inch speakers. Or look at it another way, I don't like 10-inch speakers on their own. In multiples, I think they are fantastic. In 2s, 3s or 4s, 10s do something that, so for example, a 2x10 will do something different to a single 12, to a 2x12. A 4x10 has a very particular sound compared to a 2x12 or a 4x12. And if you look at things, so that's why, so I like 10s in multiples, because you can achieve a certain response and feel and playability with them that you sometimes can't achieve with singles or multiples of 12. 8s are very interesting because they often have a very fast transient attack, but they do lack some bottom end. But as I've told a lot of you guys on this channel before, one of the best amps I ever did was a 5E3, straight up standard 5E3, but we did it like a mini tweed basement as a 4x8. So rather than a 4x10 that those basements had, we did a 4x8, but into a 5E3, and 5E3 usually has a single 12. This thing not only had the most impressive bottom end of a tweed amp I'd ever come across, but it retained all of the good things you wanted from a 5E3, but gave it this much bolder, broader, energetic sound and feel that you didn't get from a single 12. And that was a bit of an eye-opening, because a lot of people don't like 8s. So there you go. So to answer your question, in my experience, what makes the biggest difference in terms of sound to an upgrade? 8 to a 10 versus 10 to a 12, or even 8 to a 12. Going from a 10 to a 12 really seems to be the magic. Unlock that door, open up that vast realm of possibilities tonally. Classic example of that is the Princeton Reverb. If you take a standard Princeton Reverb, remove the 10, and you fit a 12-inch baffle in there and stick a good 12-inch speaker in there, the amp, you don't lose anything that the amp already had, but you do gain extra depth and bandwidth and spread, and that, I hate the term, but 3D-ness. Everything just seems to go, well, why didn't I have one of those in the first place? That's interesting. Of course, for every exception there is a rule, and for every one of my own subjective opinions there is an exception, and that's Ainsley had a black panel Princeton Reverb. I think it was a 65, but it had a factory 10-inch JBL in it, and that broke all the rules. That just sounded incredible. I think I've had it on the channel, actually. But there you go. But to answer your question, I think the most beneficial upgrade is going from a 10 to a 12. Another pedal. Now, I don't usually do pedal stuff. It doesn't really interest me. It doesn't excite me. But occasionally I do take stuff on, and it just happens that I've had quite a few effects units in lately. But don't take this as an invitation to send me your pedal stuff, because half the time I'll just say no. It's not the sort of thing I want to be getting into deep. But anyway, here we are. The reason this one is in is because it's owned by the same chap who has the J20H that's in with me. So he brought this along as well. He's a pro player, and this is one of his absolute favourite pedal units. So it's important to him that it works right, that it's sounding good, that there are no underlying problems with it, that he can take it out on the road and use it in his pro gigs, the big shows, and it's just running right. So I said I'll quite happily go through it, give it a check over it, and a service and whatnot, and just make sure there's no obvious problems with it. But as with all Mesa Boogie stuff now, especially here in the UK, factory support is getting more and more difficult. Part supply is getting more and more difficult. So if there's some things in here which have failed and are only available from Mesa, there's a high risk that I cannot get them. With that said, that we'll just go through it and have a good look. So he said give it a service as required, so go through it and just check it over, but also check the power supply. But we'll start with the unit first. Looks like we've got 2 foot switches, got 2 valves underneath the cover, so we should be able to remove these thumb screws. One thumb screw's got a lock washer, the other one doesn't, so I assume it needs 2 of them. Take the valve cover off. The wires in this a cord, always replace something or other. Okay, whatever that is. Anyway, so we've got 2 valves in here, very dusty valves. Mesa Boogie, serial number V2 04873. This valve here is a Mesa branded 7025, which is a 12AX7 type. So a bit of history on these, in that the 7025 or the 7025, whatever you want to call it, originally used to be a different design to the 12AX7. It was built as a high grade, low noise, low microphony variant of a 12AX7, but it used to be a different internal design. Modern 7025s are not built that way. They are simply 12AX7s that have gone through a grading process and chosen to be low noise, low microphony. So, but there you go. Just think of it as a high grade 12AX7 or ECC 83. That's in that side, and then this side, out you come. Here's another one. Okay. I will say that it's quite rare for the valves in these units to ever fail. They're low stress, low load, a low heat environment. They're not run hard. So they tend to last for quite a long time. And because they're not in a vibrating cabinet enclosure as well, quite often they remain that way. It's a good thing. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 knobs along the front. So one thing I like to do is just give them a turn. And you're feeling for any notchiness, any graininess. So it feels like maybe there's bits of sand in there or dirt. Can't feel anything. So you just work them round the full sweep. And you'll often find or notice as you turn the pots that they all have the same what we call rotational torque, i.e. the effort required to turn them is consistent across the board. And some pots have a low rotational torque, which means that they are really quick to turn. So some guitar pots, the user will, or the player will decide to have a low rotational torque pot for volume swells and things. Sometimes in amplifiers or effects unit, or sometimes on guitars as well, the user wants something that's a bit firmer, a bit more solid in its turning. It's not a sign of a cheap pot versus expensive pot. It's just the specification of the unit, and you choose what is most appropriate for you and your application. So testing all those 6, they all feel the same. One doesn't feel loose or quicker than the other. They're all consistent across the board. None of them feel grainy. I mean, I would argue actually that this one slightly stiffer to turn than the others, but not hugely so. But as I come across to it, there is a tiny bit more effort required. So that's something to keep in mind. So when we get inside the unit, this one here, 4th one from the right, we'll just double check that one. Switch on here, check that it's not catching, so it goes in and out. And then we'll check the foot switches as well. Now these aren't latching foot switches, so they do have a different feel to them. Okay, and the other thing we do is to check the enclosure, and what I found on this is this front panel is quite loose. And you can see this switch moves, and this one does slightly as well. So we've got some tightening up to do. Turn the unit over. You can actually see we've got a gap here relative to this side, but that's probably, yeah, it is. It's just the movement in that piece of metal. So nothing too much to worry about. We check the jacks on the back. We're missing a nut here on the mixer headphone one, so we'll have to rummage through our stash, see if we can find one. It should be a standard cliff jack style. The rest of these, I mean, that one was loose. They're all tight. Here's our power supply. AC one only, 12 volt AC, 50C. So it's actually the same as the H&K. That's interesting, isn't it? That also is a 12 volt, 1 amp, so that's important. Okay, so that's the unit itself, and the customer also said check the power supply. So here's the plug. You see it's got a natural curve to it where it's always been inserted in a certain way. But that looks okay there, doesn't it? There's nothing, it's not loose, it's not completely, or maybe it is slightly bent over. So you can't see it with your eye, but you can see it in the camera. It is slightly bent, so super long cable on it. And again, we're just checking this for splits, rips, nips, any sign of damage, just running your fingers along it all the way to the end. All seems to be okay, but if we look at the plug unit, we'll check this side first. So in the UK, we've got three prongs. This one here, which you would consider to be vertical, rather these two go horizontally. It's one way of looking at it. Sometimes they're metal, sometimes they are plastic. If it's plastic, it's because it's a class 2 appliance, so it's double insulated, okay? Which means that this unit is not actually earthed to the mains earth, because that pin is only there to open up the wall socket itself. It's not connecting this unit directly to earth, so it's a double insulated device. Okay, strain relief seems to be intact, but you can see this enclosure is cracked. So we'll have to see what we can do about that. And unfortunately, this one doesn't appear, unless there's a screw underneath this label, to come apart, which means fixing that might be tricky. Although I think we might be able to get some super glue in there and lightly clamp it down. What do you think? Okay. I wonder actually if this is not the original unit for the pedal, because it said it should be AC1 is the model number, and this is slightly different. So we can get one of these. Maybe the owner of the H&K can get a replacement unit too. Anyway, we will check this out, make sure. But we've got to fix that damage or protect that damage. Oh, look, we've got to crack this side as well. Not good. Okay. Right, let's just plug it in anyway and see if it turns on. See what it does. Okay, on the bench, power supply is on. Today's mains voltage is 240.7 volts, and let's plug into our unit. And she's turned on. So this foot switch is switching between these two LEDs, channel, blues and solo. Alternate channel clean and blues, which is done by this switch. And this is the unit on and off, the bypass switch. Okay. I can see the valves are lighting up, so at least the heaters inside have actually got a supply. You might not see that on camera. Right. And what did this says? It pulls 1 amp. So if I cycle through, I can confirm to you now it is pulling 93 milliamps out the wall. So why does it want a 1 amp supply? Is that, oh, that's not a nice fit. That's not nice whatever at all. You see the play in that? There's quite a lot of play in that, isn't there? Is that why he's asked me to check the power supply? Because he's having issues with it cutting out. Okay. Interesting. Right. If it's turning on, I assume it's going to pass signal, so I'm not worried about that for the time being. But I do want to open this unit up, get some cleaner inside the pot, make sure everything is tight, make sure everything is, or make sure there's nothing untoward inside. If I find anything, I will show you. Otherwise, when I return, we'll do some testing. Watkins Copycat says on the H&K, would it be possible to mount a little transformer from the adapter to the inside of the pedal and hardwire it in with a normal power cable and plug? My old Morley Wah has a similar sort of arrangement, if I recall. Voodoo used to have an AC supply, but it seems to be discontinued. No, the transformer from inside the plug is too large to fit inside the pedal enclosure. I'm sure you could get something else off the shelf, but the difficulty is then, well, the customer could do it if they wanted to have a go and do that themselves. I wouldn't do it because that's changing the fundamental design of the pedal, which means it needs to be reclassified. And as it's now would be a mains powered unit directly rather than isolated, it's got to go through a whole new set of rules and things. So personally, I wouldn't do it. I don't think it needs it. And that unit's fixed now. Anyway. Anode 230, great name, says, afternoon Chris, another excellent video. After working on a friend's solid state PV combo this weekend, I noticed it only had one mains cable grip. I know you're not a teaching channel, but I'll be adding a P-clip inside the cabinet before it goes home. Thank you for showing the rest of us how things should be done. Absolutely no problem. And here's the funny thing. It's not difficult to look this stuff up as well and make sure that your own stuff is compliant. So for those that are interested, if you have a hardwired mains cable, not an IEC socket, but a hardwired cable, you must have two forms of strain relief. One internal to the chassis and one external. So what have I know you're doing the right thing. Mr. Lawlier says, hey Chris, how much do you charge for a 5F1 champ? That entirely depends on the spec, but it's, I'll tell you now, it's going to be less than I want to charge, but more than you want to pay. So we'll end up both being disappointed. Also, are you able to add a low wattage switch, say under 1 watt for home use? I suppose you could do a triode mode, get down to about 2 watts. But there's not a lot of difference between 5 watt and 2 watt, to be honest with you. You've got to go down to really half a watt, and then you're looking at kind of power scaling, aren't you? So it could be done, but again, you'd be quite disappointed with the results on that. So it's not enough of a drop down without getting really expensive. And people seem to have this hilarious, well, hilarious to me anyway, notion that low wattage amps should be cheaper than high wattage ones, or vastly cheaper, when often that's not the case. So a couple of questions on Lazy J, or the Lazy J 20H. I've got some things I want to talk about on those. So KBK Man said, love that some people take the time to peel the outer wrapping off capacitors to hide the values, but don't take the 5 seconds to straighten out component leads and just do neat work. It's one of my biggest bugbears, right? And I see it on like Facebook groups of amp builders and stuff. They always talk about using the best components and, you know, premium bits and pieces, yet the quality of the actual wiring job and build standard is just not acceptable. You know, if you're charging boutique money, you need to be doing a good job. You shouldn't be rushing this stuff. And I will stand by that, and I will argue to the death anyone who says otherwise. You're welcome to use expensive bits if you want. You're welcome to use cheap bits if you want. But actually, if you're going to charge labour time, you know, and serious money, your labour better be good. The quality of your work needs to be good. So you're absolutely right. It doesn't take long to straighten out your leg leads and stuff. You know, and I actually enjoyed it. I enjoy sitting there just making sure everything is right. But then again, I'm a little OCD, so yeah, other people clearly don't care as much as I do. And finally, Howard Payne says, is it time to make sorry, I'll try that one again. Is it time to make a meticulous C20 5E3? Well, a lot of people do. A lot of people out there do take their time to build these amps. to the highest standard possible. And I've got full respect for those guys. But as I said, some people just don't seem to care, and it shows in their work. And, you know, if that stuff is out there for people to see, you're going to get found out. So I don't know why, you know, we can see, everyone can see when someone cares about the quality of their work, cares about their product and puts it out there in the world. And we can see when they don't. So speaking of J20, since I put out the first video on the first one and the one with the amp that I've got in now, I have been inundated with inquiries about people wanting me to go through their J20s, a couple of J10s as well actually, although I haven't, hold my hands up, I've yet to have a J10 in the workshop, so it's not fair of me to comment on that. But I've had enough J20s in here and J20Hs, both early ones, mid ones, and quite recent ones as well, to know what they're about and what the score is. Now, I'll say this again, just to caveat everything. I really, really, really like the tone and sound of those amplifiers. Yes, it's a tweaked, modified 5E3, whatever you want to call it, but it's a pretty good one. It does sound good. They've got that. When you're playing with them, you quite quickly get lost and you just go into that making music zone rather than spending ages tweaking it, which is the sign of a playable amplifier, right? And a good one at that. But it's, as I always said, it's the build standard, the build quality, it's the failure to respect any known safety regulation that I know of, and I sell to most countries in the world. And it's things like poor grounding schemes inside, they're noisy, they're hummy, they're buzzy. They could be quite easily built to a much better standard. And people, as I said, I've been inundated with inquiries of people who want me to go through them. So if Lazy J aren't interested in making those amplifiers good, then I may as well cash in, right? I may as well do it. I've got the experience, I've got the know-how, and I care about those customers. So here's what we're going to do. For owners of those amplifiers, if you want me to go through that amplifier, so on the J20, and I'm only going to offer one level of this service, which is the kitchen sink, right? So we're going to do everything to it. We're not going to half-arse it. We're going to fit one of my custom wound power transformers, one that means you don't have to run the noisy cooling fan, which is just ridiculous anyway. It's a 5E3, just spec it right, but maintains the sag and the bloom that you get from the original transformer, because that's the key to the way those amplifiers play, right? And we're going to do that. We're going to remove the Forbin board and put in a high quality FR4 eyelet board with quieter, better quality components, but again, ones that retain and preserve the core tone of that amplifier. So we're not trying to change the way the thing sounds, we're just trying to improve reliability, durability, and reduce noise floor and stuff like that. We're going to upgrade the pots, get rid of those awful cheap CTS, you know, the budget CTSs that are in there, put in high quality, high rotational torque Bournes, including, but we'll retain the push-pull tone control on there. So board out, new bits and pieces in there, wire it all back, improve the grounding scheme, as I said. Crucially, update the main supply so it is fully compliant with whatever market that amplifier is built for. So you know that in the event of a fault or a failure, you, your house, your family, you're all protected, so nothing is going to go wrong. the amplifier will operate as it should, and then also fit a HT fuse while we're in there. So that's going to be the J20. On the J20H, it's all of that except the mains transformer does not need replacing. So that's going to be a cheaper option. I haven't worked out prices yet, but I will be offering these because I think it's important. So, but the rest of the stuff applies, and you'll end up with a super sweet sounding, wonderfully playing J20 without any of the known issues that they come with. And I'm so confident in that I will stand by that work for 12 months, parts and labour. So yeah, make of that what you will. And then again, if you've got a J10 or a J35 or a J80 or even the little J5, and you think this could be better, I'm not entirely sure, give me a call. We'll work something out. We'll see what can be done. None of this is going to be cheap because my expertise is not cheap. The parts that I use is not going to be cheap, but that's why you're coming to me, because you want it done properly. You want this thing to be as good as it can be with absolutely no corners cut. So there you go. That's kind of a little announcement, isn't it? If you want a J20 that truly is as good as it can be, then yeah, get in touch and we'll work something out. I'm just working on this Ainsley signature, and I haven't been procrastinating on the build, on this particular build per se, but there is part of this build, a point that you get to when you're wiring it up that I hate doing. It's really fiddly, it's really frustrating, and it's really tricky to get right, and often even I have to redo it a couple of times just to get it exactly where it wants to be. So I've been putting it off and doing every other job in the chassis that I can. Just you know what it's like. Anyway, I was just staring at it and I was thinking, if I do this other bit first, then do that, it makes the whole thing much easier. And now I can't help but want to do it again. So I've completely changed my mindset on it because I've figured out a better way. And this comes back to a thing that I always say to people with my amplifiers, is that every amp that I build has to be better than the last one. So I'm constantly improving stuff. And it might not be in the way it sounds or plays, it just might be in the way that it's built, but I'm constantly trying to improve every amplifier. So each one must be better than the last in some aspect. I think you should never rest on your laurels. You should never stay still. You're constantly pushing, finding better ways to do things. Whatever the weakest point is, fix that and then, improve that. So whatever it is, it might be the workflow and the way that I'm working. It might be in the way I route a wire, it could be in the component that I'm using, whatever it is, but every amp needs to be better than the last one. And I'm really pleased that I've now figured that little puzzle out, and as I said, now I've gone from not wanting to do that particular tiny job inside the chassis to I can't wait to get on the next chassis and do it again and confirm that that's the best way to do it. And now I'm thinking, well, hold on a minute, I've done that, but that also means I can do this in a new way. And that's going to make that even better. And I think actually it's going to save, I know this doesn't sound like a lot, it's going to save me around 10, 12 minutes per chassis build, because I've worked out a new way of doing something, a new process. I've improved that workflow. So what's gone from being quite a boring Monday afternoon, that's just gone lunch, to a really exciting one. So good news. Selma is all done, or at least the recap is all done. It's all back together. It plays and sounds great. although these things don't really have any clean headroom. It's all grind and grunt, which is I guess is part of the charm, right? But it's got an issue that the dual light has a mind of its own, and I cannot, for all of my knowledge and skill and experience, cannot get to the bottom of it. The dual light just turns on and off by itself. I've put a new bulb in there. The issue remains. I have measured voltage on the bulb holder itself, and that remains consistent whether the bulb is illuminated or not. So we're not getting a dropout. So there's nothing shorting against anything. I've cleaned the bulb holder. It's not affected by vibration or noise or power surges. It just doesn't come on. For ages. It doesn't come on for ages and ages and ages, and then it will just come to life, and then it will stay on for ages, and you can play this thing, you can knock it, you can try and wiggle the wires in the back. It stays beautifully illuminated, and then it just says after a certain amount of time, I don't want to be on anymore, and then it will switch off again. And it's actually driving me insane. I hate it when things don't make sense and you keep getting false positives, false negatives, whatever it is. It's killing me. It's actually killing me this afternoon. I've spent far too long, over an hour now, trying to work out why this dual light doesn't want to work, or does work and then doesn't want to work. It just doesn't make sense. I don't get it. I'm having an absolute nightmare with it, so I don't know what to do. And you don't get intermediate stages where it's partially illuminated. You see the filaments slightly light up. It's either on or off. But as I said, there's no voltage drop to the bulb. So if I measure on the bulb holder now, there will be voltage there, exactly the same amount as there is when the bulb is on. I've put a new bulb in it, still exhibits the same symptoms. I've cleaned the bulb holder, cleaned all the connections, checked continuity on all the wires, and I'm just having one of those afternoons, and it's winding me up an absolute treat. So yeah, I'm gonna I can't spend any more time on it today. I need to get on with other stuff, so I'm gonna completely cold cycle this, come back in the morning, have a look and see if we can get anywhere. Richard says, "Good day, Chris. Richard from Van Diemen's Audio Analog Disruptors." Well, that's a pedal brand if I ever heard one, right? Down in the far south of Tasmania, Australia. Wow. So, yeah, probably the complete opposite side of the globe to where I am here in sunny South Northamptonshire. I've been a follower of you for some time now. I really enjoy listening and looking when I can, watching you discuss and work on all those amplifiers whilst I'm building pedals. There you go. It's very relaxing. Well, I do appreciate you tuning in. I just thought I'd say hello and keep up the fabulous work. Cheers, Richard. Well, Richard, you are more than welcome. Welcome to the channel. I'll check out your website, see what you offer. I'm sure you do good stuff, and keep up the hard work. Our friends over at Bluebird Amplification said, "Hi Chris, I see Bourne's no longer making the PDA 24 series. Got any alternatives lined up?" You're absolutely right. They discontinued the PDA 24. I think they announced it February 2021 and stopped shipping about a year later, I think. So it's been at least 3 years now that those units have been discontinued. But they are still widely available. I mean, I've got hundreds of the things on the shelf, and so have my suppliers. So I don't need a longer term solution just yet. In regards to CTS, I do like their dimple backs. They've got the nicer taper than the flat backs that we see in that Lazy J. I did used to use those CTS, but it's specifically the 1 meg logs that have that dead zone between 0 and 2, so nothing happens at all, and then it all kicks in. So a terrible pot, don't use them. The dimple backs are much better, but the Bournes are kind of A grade, top level. When the Borns eventually run out, I'll probably go to Omega and get some made. If there's nothing else there that's readily available, Omega are a great potentiometer manufacturer here in the UK. You can order pretty much whatever you want in whatever format. And actually on the website, it's kind of got like a pot builder, so you can choose your specs and stuff. And if you need something custom, you just go to them and ask. It's how I got the 10 meg pots made for the harmonic trem stuff I used to do. I went to Omeg. But yeah, that's probably what I'll do. But you're right, they are discontinued, but they are, as I said, they are still widely available. So in their thousands, so not a problem. And finally, a message from Celt Amplification, who is a wonderful amp builder in France, who is also now a channel member. So welcome. It says, great video, Chris. I'm a big fan of your channel. I don't know how you find the time to do all of your work, the vids and racing as well. Hats off. Well, so the problem is that I absolutely love my job. It's brilliant. I love coming in and building amplifiers, fixing them, working on them, doing all of that. So I'm in here 5 days a week minimum. I'm often in on a Saturday as well. And Mrs. Rift is a counsellor, psychotherapist, and sometimes she has clients on a Sunday from the home office. So it means I get kicked out. So I come down to the workshop and work on Sundays too. So often, I will be in here 7 days a week. And I love it. I absolutely love it. As I said, my daughter's grown up and moved out, so and we're not having any more. So all I've got is time. I've got time to do the job I love and time to do the hobbies that I love. So yeah, you squeeze it all in. One thing that used to annoy me, going on a tangent here now, when I used to, years and years ago, when I used to be a guitar teacher, and students would say, I didn't practice this week, I didn't have the time. I used to think, well, that tells me that you don't want to do it. Because if you're really enthusiastic by something and something that you want to do, you just naturally make time to do it, right? And so, and I think that's a good barometer of how much you enjoy doing something. When you really want to do it, you'll move everything else out of the way to get to focus on that. And if you're not doing that, then clearly you don't want to be doing it. But so, I make the time to build amplifiers, come in here, do this. I make time to work on the race cars and stuff like that. I make time, to go away. I take regular breaks away on holiday with Mrs. Rift and family. Because I want to do it, and therefore you make the time to do it. But also, I'm one of these people that if I don't want to do it, I don't do it. I don't worry myself with things that I'm not interested in. So there you go. But yeah, anyway, Kel also says, by the way, would you be fair enough to share a link for the IEC puncher? They're made by a company called Greenlee. And they do lots of different sizes. I got mine from RS. They are expensive, but if you're a pro shop, it pays for itself quite quickly in the amount of times you use it. I've got two sizes that I use, one for each IEC socket size that I have. I would like to have one. What I'll do is I'll put a link in the description below. And then you'll be able to get yourself one on order. Well, that's it then, guys. Thank you very much for watching once again. As always, please give this video a thumbs up or your comments and questions down below. Ring the notification bell. Subscribe if you haven't already. If you're feeling super generous, why not join the channel like these guys have? And I will catch you all at the next one.